Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can you all hear me okay at the back? So I don't need to adjust the sound volume for you. You're okay? I've got to be careful to walk within so many lines because we're being filmed. I didn't know whether you were aware of that. We're being filmed today. And I'm interested to see the playback when Lyndon keeps disappearing off the end and then back onto the screen. It's quite interesting. Thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you today. I was sort of dragged in. I am here on holiday, which was correctly stated at the beginning, and somebody found out I was here, so here I am. My wife doesn't know I'm here. She thinks I'm shopping in Brisbane at the moment. And she said, why are you wearing this suit? And I said, well look, you know, when you buy pink diamonds, darling, you have to look the part. So she said, hurry up. My only problem is I'll be going back without pink diamonds this afternoon. So I said, they're too expensive. Okay, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of an outline as to what it is that I do and how it fits with the sort of environment that you find yourselves working in and around some of the issues that you've already been discussing this morning. I mean, I haven't prepared anything, I'll be honest, for this session because I really am on holiday and my wife wouldn't let me do anything this time around. So I've listened intently this morning to try and get an idea of the sorts of things that certainly the Queensland Police Service are talking to you about, and to see whether I can sort of add maybe a slightly different perspective on the basis of the things that they've addressed and on the issues that you're interested in. But the key thing is, I guess on a day like this, when you're looking at things like personal development, it's really important that you get something from this. You know, it's no good for you to walk away from this session at lunchtime today and think, well, that was a waste of time. You know, because you've done yourself a disservice. You need to be able to walk away from this and think, actually, that's reinforced something that I thought I knew, or it's given me a different perspective, or it's added some value to what we do, or at the very least, the networking was good. You know, so you've got to get something from it, which is really important. And largely, you know, the onus and responsibility is on those that are presenting to make sure that that happens. But it's also a responsibility for you to make sure that you ask the right questions for yourself, you know, to get something from it. So I guess the message there is, you know, I'm a resource. There's, like the police staff here are resources for you. Ask those questions. Don't let everybody disappear and not have asked the question that's been concerning you. Even if you think it's a silly question, you know, I'm sure that it's worth sharing because there'll be other people in the room, I suspect, that think much the same, but haven't prepared themselves enough to ask the question. Very briefly, my background is I retired a couple of years ago from the Avon Somerset Constabulary in the UK as a detective chief superintendent, and my service, my 30 years, was primarily as a detective involved in the investigation of major crime cases involving child deaths, child protection cases, child abuse investigations, murders, serial murders, and things of that nature. So, in that time, certainly in the last 15 years of my service, I became interested very much in the area of activity and work that you are involved in. And that started primarily because of a case of a Spanish boy, 12-year-old Spanish boy, who was sexually abused by the host father in a house whilst he was on a 4-week language exchange program in my area. Now, that was not reported to us. And that sort of dovetails into exactly what QPS has just been saying to you about the under-reporting issue, and I'll come on to that again in a moment. But it wasn't reported, and we only heard a rumour. We tracked this lad back to his home in Spain, and his parents confirmed that he had been sexually abused, but they didn't want to pursue any criminal prosecution, so that was the end of the story. Apart from the fact, it was the beginning of the story for me, and that effectively has changed my life, and that was 13 years ago, because the last 13 years I've been involved in exactly that. The question that I was left with is, well, first of all, who is this individual that committed the offence? And it turned out to be a known and convicted sex offender. So the question that raised was, how does a known and convicted sex offender actually get into a position of trust in the homestay and look after young people? The second thing was, more shocking, was that he'd actually been doing that for 3 years. So the next question is, well, how many other young people had been victims during that time? And if they had been victims, had they reported it? Well, we had no reports, so we could only assume that maybe there was nothing else. Is that the case? So the next question I asked was, how many other offenders like this do we have operating in our area? And when you actually ask that question, the answer isn't very easy to find. Now, in some parts of the world, it is now, as time has moved on, because this was 13, 14 years ago, things have changed a little bit. And actually, here in Queensland, things are reasonably secure around some of those that have got convictions because of your blue card system. However, what you have to remember about your blue card is that it's only as good as what we know about. There's research that's been conducted some years ago now here in Australia, and it was replicated in the UK, which indicated that the conviction rate for offenders in this area of abuse, that's neglect, emotional, physical and sexual abuse of young people under the age of 18, is in Australia around 2% and in the UK 6%. Now, either way, those aren't good figures, which means that convictions and intelligence that relates to these type of people is few and far between. So, just because you've got a bit of paper that says, I don't have any convictions, I'm a wonderful person, look, here's my record, it means, in my humble opinion, diddly squat. It means that potentially you haven't been caught yet, or it means you are really a good guy. But which is which? How do we know? So, I guess the point of explaining that bit is just to say to you, just because you have a blue card system, and there are systems in other parts of the world, like the UK, we have the Criminal Records Bureau system, and we're about to engage with a new system, which is delightful, called the Vetting and Barring Scheme. And if you're interested in that, oh, I could talk to you for hours about that. It's amazing. It's still not going to make largely any difference to that synopsis, in that unless we know, unless we have the intelligence or the information or the conviction in the pot, when we check you, we won't know anything about you. So that's the reality. So what does that mean then for the safety of young people in particular? What it means, I think, is that there is even more need for those in responsibility, and I'm looking at you, because you are the people in the equation, you're in the jigsaw, you are the people that have responsibility for these young people.